that which arises. That which arises, the autopoetic poetry of Ani Ahaba. I open to still point. We are moving at breakneck speed toward breakdown of our social systems. May I read from my book?
Sure.
Okay. It's called Still Point. No, let's see. Still Point. We are moving at breakneck speed toward breakdown of our social systems. We are moving at breakneck speed toward breakthrough of a new culture. We are moving at breakneck speed toward technological connectivity. In this quickly changing pace, I have found a still and changeless place where simply I am.
Nice.
And it's a stable place. and then this one. So what now? So what now? The war, I don't know what that's referring to. The war is over. The battle is won. What am I to do now? I'm a champion and a warrior. What's a champion and a warrior without a cause or a war? What am I to do now with my energy, love, and nobility? My devotion, skills, and tenacity? My long-standing commitment to justice, dedication to service and availability? As I search for purpose, and the voice which calls me, moves me, inspires me to action, I seem to hear conspirators in a high realm saying in unison, lay down your arms and embrace all that is. Yeah, I like doing that.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you two? Besides breakfast.
We can't hear you, Robert.
I just finished lunch.
Ah, okay.
But no, it's been a good day. Had people over to converse about various things, went for a walk, sent out emails. Easy day.
Nice.
I haven't done anything yet except get dressed and brush my teeth, comb my hair.
Well, that's a good start, isn't it?
It's a good start.
I'm sort of in recovery.
Yeah.
I had the most wonderful webinar yesterday that I hosted on biochar. It was brilliant. It was just fantastic. In fact, some of the attendees said it was the most informative on the subject that they had attended, and they just gotten through another one here.
Wonderful.
In Spokane. And then I didn't record it.
Oh. Well, you can always do it again.
But it's 4 other people.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, they'll probably want to come back. Especially
if it's actually the second time I've done this. The first time didn't work out very well either. But that wasn't my fault. That was somebody else's. But it was really good. It was so good. So I don't know. We'll see if they want to I had a thought and I sent it out, and I haven't dared to look to see if anybody's seen it and responded. But so we'll see.
Now, were these various experts in the field, or were they just interested people? Yeah.
No, they were experts in the field.
So it was truly engendering furtherance of knowledge and
Oh yeah, it was just brilliant. Yeah, yeah. Albert Bates has done 2 books on the subject, and he's been involved for 25 years. So he did a thing on the history. And then Julie Anderson is the head of farming and agriculture for the Department of Commerce. So she was talking about the state and what they're doing. And then Corona Stark talked about the Ring of Fire, a kiln, and its design and why it works so well and how it's being used. And then John Webster is the communications director for USBI, and he talked about the standards for biochar and how it's being used as a carbon sink, and their work with composters to develop biochar and compost. It was truly wonderful.
Good. You're making
And
progress.
it's all gone.
It's all gone.
They all have their slide decks, so it's possible to resurrect if they want to do that. But yeah, so we'll see.
Well, I encourage you to continue being as generative as you are.
Thank you. Yes. Anyway, I'm still getting over the shock.
I've gotten a sudden interest in democracy and the state of our union. I'm giving it my attention, and I've got this book now.
Hold it toward you.
Can you see it?
Democracy Awakening.
Yeah, Democracy Awakening.
Oh, here comes Mark.
Oh, okay. Haven't seen him in a long time.
No.
There he is, his little picture.
There he is.
And his big face.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning and good afternoon.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So we just checked in. How are you?
The first thing I see when I look out the window is beautiful blue sky. The fall has just been wonderful here in New England, and so that's nice, because I think without that it'd just be all too depressing at the moment. Check.
So were you thinking elections when you said that? Because Ani, oh no, okay. Because Ani was just about to talk about democracy.
Well, it's interesting, the history of democracy, and it's in this book, a lot of other books too, but it's a struggle. It's an experiment.
It's a participative sport.
What?
It's a participative sport. Because if people don't participate, it doesn't happen.
But it's not a sport. Sport doesn't draw the admiration. The word sport doesn't draw the admiration that democracy does.
Mm.
It's a holy thing. And we have quite a dynamic history about democracy in this country and the processes we've been through, and it's still not like like it's still a lot, it's still alive and dynamic and in experimental stage and very important.
Well, as a kid, it's the only time I've really experienced, very young kid, early 50s into the late 50s. In southern Vermont, Sandgate, Vermont, they had a council, town council, where pretty much everyone was aware and many would come to the meetings. And man, was there a thrashing out of any, any subject whatsoever.
There was what?
A thrashing out of any subject whatsoever. And that's how thrashing, people got into discussion about every subject and every aspect of it. And it could take all night at times. I mean, not for me, I was sent home, but that's what I remember as a real working democracy. Mm-hmm. Whereas what happened the last couple of nights here in Atlanta was one Trump flew into the airport that's a mile away here, our little corporate airport, in a plane that was way overweight for what this airport can handle, or supposedly. I mean, it was safe enough for his big plane. And then there was a motorcade all the way up to this big event, and he had people there, celebrities. Kamala, on the other hand, showed up at yesterday evening, and with our former President Obama and what's his name, the boss, Bruce Springsteen. And, it's become this, well, you spoke about sport. Well, it's kind of like football it gathers a lot of attention. So do these kinds of events. And I can't compute the two, even though they're both called democracy. It's more than a vote. And it's not that real democracy doesn't exist in Atlanta. It does. Stacey Abrams, for instance, has led many, spirited evening of discussion in various neighborhoods. And I don't think it happens much in our neighborhood, although I've been on the planning meetings, which are somewhat, same. But you're saying if we participate, and if we don't, we lose it. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's very clear that, in its forms right now during this, hyperventilated, campaign, it doesn't really reflect the original, in my mind, much at all. And I think it's important to remember that, because particularly New England was known for its, village town meetings. Mm-hmm. And it was real. Mm-hmm.
Well, we still have those in Spokane.
Threw them out.
Yeah, we still have those in Spokane. They're not as well attended as they should be, but they are attended.
Yeah.
And people really can participate. You can sit on committees and make policy decisions and do all sorts of stuff with fair amount of ease. Actually, just takes the time out of your day to do it. So that's been one of the things I've loved about Spokane, is how easy it is to participate and how open people are to that participation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On on the back, on the back of this book, that's called Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America by Heather Cox Richardson.
Yeah, she's great.
And she writes, with remarkable clarity and the same, let's see, an essential read for anyone concerned about the state of America. The Democracy Awakening is more than a history book. It's a call to action. Richardson reminds us that democracy requires constant vigilance and participation from all of us, showing how we as a nation can take the lessons of the past to secure a more just and equitable future. Democracy is fragile.
Mhm.
It requires our participation. And that's why I got this book. I'm hoping to be generative about and a good steward about democracy, because it is our prime quality.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it isn't just about showing up. The way people choose sides so easily, it seems, you have to be bold. I mean, I know, Kath,
Yes.
I'm sure you in some of your meetings are quite bold and, hold steady in whatever remarks you're making. And you have to, if you're going to say something, it has to come from your personal experience that you know something about. Generalizations that are just tossed about, aren't helpful. And they will quickly be put down in meetings that I've gone to. And yet you have to come back again and again.
Well, this new belief that if you're passionate about something, there has to be truth there. And that the passion is really the measure of trustworthiness is one of the problems that we have, because there's nothing wrong with passion, and passion certainly does have a grain of truth to it, usually from that person's perspective, but it is not truth, and it can be very mistaken and very misplaced. And if you're not open to that exploration,
Well,
then it gets really hard to have conversations around that, because people who hold those views gravitate to the passion of the speaker, not to the truth of what they say.
yeah, I mean, passion requires maturity. Passion requires manageability. Of course it does.
No, I think it just,
I mean, I have to manage my passions. Well, why are you shaking your head no?
a lot of the ways in which passion has been expressed by some people in the public eye has been more about the fervor of emotion and the drama of the presentation than about the quality or depth of the content.
Of the message, right? I agree.
Yeah.
Well, they're not mature. They're not doing it right.
No. But it's been effective. It's been effective. It's moved others, and it's brought others into a feeling of unity and connection that they have not had before. It's I can understand it, that if You know, if you really have a problem with people who are different, and it's really irritating to listen to languages you don't understand, and you really feel that sometimes people are taking advantage of you because they get ahead and you don't, and you're working hard and it doesn't make sense. And somebody else comes out and says that in public, and you go, yes, that's my experience. I believe that. So he must know what's happening because he knows what's happening to me. So I trust that. And I don't care about anything else. He understands my situation. So I'm fine. I will trust him because he's where I am. I don't understand it either. He says he does understand it. Have at it, because he understands me. So I trust that connection. That passion that he expresses for my issues rings true to me. And I'm not doing any more research or any more thinking about it because it resonates fine.
Who's the he?
Mr. Trump.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I want to point out, Heather Cox Richardson wrote a piece this morning that I was reading exactly on this topic, by the way.
Hmm.
But she did not, she definitely, I don't even think well, she did mention Trump just as a name, but her primary focus was on the shift, starting with the, you know, in the aughts and teens, with, you know, basically the, what are they called? The Tea Party people
Yeah. The Tea Party. Yep.
took over the Republican presence in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
Names, you know, and just how they aligned, and they gradually, through just intransigence, you know, took over, like Mitch McConnell. Of course, he's Senate, but you know, whoever happened, they had control over whoever would be the Speaker of the House when the Republicans were in, you know, the
Well, they still do, actually. The
but
guy who's there now is part of that too.
she pointed out just how they have chosen to simply say no,
Mm-hmm.
not compromise whatsoever. And she, in this article, she was actually pointing out how dangerous that is, because that even went against what the party favorite, you know, the old party leaders, you know, basically they wanted smaller government, you know, they wanted to, you know, limit what government had its hands in, so forth. But this took it to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, in the last couple of years, they've gotten nothing done. I mean, literally, and that's coming from an esteemed historian, literally nothing done.
Yep. And they
And
don't want anything done. It's fine.
and that suddenly becomes extremely dangerous when there's so many things that need to be at least addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so Trump didn't start any of this.
Oh no,
He's
he's just
a Democrat when this original, you know, the Tea Party set were you know, getting their start.
well, it started with Reagan. I mean,
But
it goes back to the 40s.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they've gotten more sophisticated.
he knew a good thing when he saw it. So that's how he's moved into a position. And you described very well how he reaches people who have nothing to do with him, actually.
Well, he had that insight. Nobody else had that insight, actually. That
Right.
was the thing he brought to the table, was he was really aware of the amount of distress that a certain level of American felt, which the rest of us weren't aware of. And that was the shock to see that so many people were really unhappy.
And even this time in 2016, or even earlier, midsummer, he and his team were diving into, you know, the various social media as to how they could maneuver, how they could influence people, how, you know, and whether the Russians were involved or not. I mean, I happen to believe they were, but it doesn't really matter. They started to work out the strategic programs that would bring them into, you know, into this area where people are listening only to, you know, those they agree with, and it's just getting, you know, their self-fortifying, you know, belief systems. And they had, you know, I mean, Stephen Miller, of course, stands out in that regard, because he's a brilliant man, and he knew he knew how to maneuver that sort of thing, and still does. Yeah. To
Yeah,
me, that's
there's
not.
something, it's not.
This is not democracy.
No, no, it's a way to undermine democracy, because democracy is really about everybody, and they're really splitting that everybody into an us and them.
Yeah.
And
Well, one of the well, one of the lines in this book, Democracy Awakening, that I really like. People in the US have never lost sight of the promise of democracy because marginalized people had kept it in the forefront of the national experience from the very first days of the new nation. Minorities and women had consistently, persistently, and bravely insisted on their right to equality before the law and to a say in their government.
right, right. And that speaks to the split in the youth that is happening, which is very interesting, because the women who are liberated are really happy with their freedom, their ability to go to school, to get jobs, to do all, make money, to do all sorts of things. And they tend to be liberal. But the young men are finding it hard to get work, confusion about what their identity is, how they're going to be, and they are going into conservative religion, which preaches women should be taken care of.
Yeah, like
And
Trump.
it has split the young vote. They've gotten more conservative and more resistant to change, and the women have gotten more liberal and more open to change.
And it's
That's
not so
very
small
interesting.
thing either. It's like there's a split of 70-30, more or less. 70% young men are, you know, are Trump supporters, and 30% of young women, and the exact opposite.
Opposite in the liberal, yeah.
This is showing up in spades, you know,
Yep.
on the national scene.
Yep. And that's one of the levers that Trump has been using. And now the whole Magna Party. I mean, it's not just him, it's way beyond him at this point. But they're really using that to stimulate fear and poor me, that attitude in young men, because they just can't do anything and they're trying hard, right? They're good people, they're working hard. It's got to be somebody else, can't be their fault. And so they're directing their anger and irritation at liberals and elites.
There's something to be said for that. I had a direct experience of it in 2003 when there was a slight downturn during that time. And a carpenter I knew was, you know, I'd gotten to know him, and it was feeding him jobs when it made sense, you know, when it worked for me. And then suddenly he's having a sale of all his equipment, and he's just getting out of it. And actually a number of this is in New England and Massachusetts, a number of builders were dropping out because of the lack of business. And I went to an elite college. I'm very smart when it comes to, you know, managing how to use the system, how to, you know, figure out how these things work. He had to sell everything and he moved to Pennsylvania or something. I mean, there really is some substance to what
Yes, yes,
people
yeah.
are saying, that there's no overriding equalizer out there in terms of people's lives when it comes to these economic cycles that are, you know, just destroying some people's livelihood.
I think I would frame it in a little different way because to give credence to some of this angst, which I do agree with you is absolutely real. The more liberal half of our nation has been so focused on the underdog, they've not paid attention to the impacts on other people. And it's sort of like, well, you guys already have yours, so you can afford to give up some for those who don't have any. Well, that's fine to say, but if you're the one who's losing something, it's not so good. You don't feel great about it. You don't feel like it's a gift. You feel like it's been stolen. And that is the angst that we ignored and are not paying any attention to still, frankly,
Right.
that is really festering. I mean, it's nice to be for the underdog. It's nice to be equitable, but it needs to be equitable, which means that both sides have to understand their role and be partners in the solution instead of taking one and giving to the other. That's not an approach that makes people happy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether these are self-inflicted damages.
Mm-mm.
Good friend of mine here, he's 30 years younger, but at least almost 40. He's a builder and he talks too much. He talks and he talks and he wonders why his price quotes aren't anywhere near what, you know, it ends up. So, I mean, he's actually been doing fairly well. He's stayed solvent, you know, through ups and downs through the 2008 damage. But he's voting for Trump. I mean, he and I don't talk about it. That's how we remain friends. But because I love the guy, he's a really amazing guy. But you know, I can totally understand the way he feels. And on the other hand, I know too much about him to feel that it's something outside of him that's really causing the trouble.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's a self-reflective piece that's just not there. People don't understand how they contribute to that. Yeah. Yeah. Not taking responsibility for their own actions at all. It's all being done to them. Yeah.
He's more self-aware than most, I think, but I can still see the connection.
Mhm.
And oh yeah, he and his wife, they hooping and hollering all the way up to Buford last night. No, the night before to hear Trump. Really excited.
Yeah.
I hope they didn't just get a little dance. That would have really disappointed me if I'd gone.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Think it
all.
was, yeah.
That's all I'll show of my feelings.
So Mark, you've been quiet. What do you got to say?
About democracy.
Or this whole situation, you know?
I wish I had more belief in it being a process to engage in and have it support sort of a directional shift of the magnitude that is required.
Mhm.
And I don't. And that leads me to being interested in directing my attention elsewhere.
Mhm.
And like as provocative perhaps as this comment I'm about to make is, I don't truly believe anyone knows which candidate is the best to vote for in the big scheme of things.
Mm.
Like it's very easy to make an argument that in the short term, one candidate is demonstrably better than the other. But given the scale of change that will occur on a pathway towards a flourishing world, I don't know which candidate is best to support that shift. And I don't think anyone else does either.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I find strongly held ideas about candidates and what it's going to mean to just be a bit naive, and at the same time it's pointing to real things, which is one candidate is most likely going to inflict more short-term suffering than another. But the transition towards a flourishing humanity will, unfortunately, no doubt, come along with a lot of suffering, because the people who have power, i.e. money, are going to do everything they can to make that transition better for them and therefore not good for others.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To me, there's no doubt which candidate would be a better president of the United States, that Kamala Harris far exceeds in capacity to serve.
Mark's taking a bigger picture though, because given the changes that we need to see and the amount of collapse that's got to happen as the climate impacts really hit, sometimes a mess needs to be made before you can clean it up. And maybe the quicker the mess is made, the quicker it'll get cleaned up. It's anybody's guess, which is better, which.
I think also that this has really become a moralistic choice. You know, I was talking about Trump a few minutes ago. It's really because I could not stand myself being that kind of a man. I don't consider a man. And so the moral choice is Harris. But in the long run, Mark, I absolutely agree with you. I don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you, Mark, I've chosen to focus on other things, to put my energy where I feel the leverage is for change. However else the rest of it works. That if people just really get to understand nature better and get committed to working with it, then all the rest of it will kind of even out at some point in time. But
yeah,
In this book, Democracy Awakening, I've been looking at this one phrase, as Lincoln wrote, the legitimate object of government is to do for a community of people whatever they need to have done, but cannot do at all, or cannot so well do for themselves in their separate and individual capacities.
Yep.
That's where government comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's some probably disagreement about that. There are some people that might see it. I mean, that's one of the problems I find in some of the discussions that I'm in GRC is that governance is also often seen as control of things instead of as a facilitator and supporter of stuff. And that control just gets out of hand. It just does. Because people got different ideas of what needs to be managed and who needs to be managed and how they need to be managed. And that just colors the conversation. Yeah, if governance is really to help people flourish, then we've got conversations we can have about things. There's a way to discuss through stuff as opposed to control over. Yeah.
It's all about equality. Which we don't have a good handle on yet.
No, we don't understand. Yeah, we want to make equality the same. And it's not sameness.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So Mark, how do you see whole systems and healthy whole systems related to the situation we're in?
The situation we're in is a very unhealthy whole system.
Say more.
I almost want to come at it from the other angle, which is in trying to be definitional, which means to say that we currently have the consciousness of a degenerating world, and for us to be moving towards a regenerating world, a flourishing world, it requires us to be developing that consciousness. And we're in this sort of weird pickle where we have this whole system which is totally coherent in a degenerative direction, which makes it very hard sort of for three things to be present. One is to have sufficient consciousness that we have insufficient consciousness. Two is maybe it's 3 steps. So to have insufficient consciousness, and then to have insufficient consciousness that we have insufficient consciousness, and then perhaps as a result, not a lot of openness to seeing that in an insufficiency of consciousness, and then being in the world in ways that expand it. And so we're in a pickle, and I and perhaps us are sitting here in our own little ways, working on bringing about a little node or spot of difference that, if we're so fortunate, might be informed by a more developed system consciousness than is present in mainstream people and organizations, and drawing upon that to bring about difference that can expand that consciousness outwards. But it's not necessarily something the system supports. So it's tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think it's all that complicated.
Not complicated. You're right. It's very simple. However, that doesn't mean to say that it's possible or easy.
Well, it's
Within the given system.
It's not easy.
I mean, I think that's really a key. There has to be a point where we step out of the system, which could look like breakdown, or it could look like an experiment, or it could look like a discovery. It could look like several things, but we need to step out of the system, because I think you're absolutely right. You can't you can't make the change by being where you are. You have to be different in order to be different. Yeah, you have to kind of step out of that. And that's how we do that is really going to be the crux of the transition. Whether we can do that with some savoir-faire or whether it's going to be a big crunch. Yeah.
It's a representative government. It's equality. I mean, that's not hard to grasp.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's not hard to build a society around those principles.
Sure it is, because if I've got everybody saying the same song that I have, that's equality. Somebody comes in with a different tune. Well, they just need to join us. That's all.
Music is
That
music.
makes it equal, right?
Yeah, come on in. Let's hear your harmony.
Well, we've got to let go of our song a little bit to bring people in, and that's the problem.
Well, it's not letting go of it. It's making room for everybody else.
Well, it is letting go in some. I love the Unitarian Church, which has spent decades working on anti-racism, and in some places really brilliantly. But when you walk into any Unitarian church I've been in, they're all white and we all sing the same songs. And we love our songs a lot. And when you want to bring in Latino people, they don't sing the same songs. Or you want to bring in Black people, they don't sing the same songs either. They don't even have the same rhythm. And that's uncomfortable. You know, and I love them and I want to be equal to them and I want my own songs. Thank you. And so do they. So they have their churches, we have ours. Because neither one of us is willing to give up what we love in terms of the songs we sing and the style of service that we have. Unitarians will sit there and be totally quiet and listen to somebody else. You get Black Unitarian preachers who want to get an amen from the audience. Boy, do they have to work for it to get people to respond to them. White folks don't do that. We're not comfortable with that, you know? So what's equality in those situations? How do you define that? What does it look like?
Freedom of participation.
Yeah, well, the freedom is we go our separate ways because we don't want to change.
Well, we can bring our own forward as someone else brings theirs forward, and everybody bring whatever.
It doesn't work that way.
And be fair about it. Be embracing about it.
Yeah, no, we're still working at that. We don't even do that for the youth who don't like to sit there and listen either. So they have their own services. They go somewhere else and they participate. They create their own services. They bring their own music. They do their own stuff. But they don't do it with the adults who have this sit still, listen to, sing occasionally service. So, I mean, this is a denomination that really passionately believes all these things that we're talking about, that it should be equality, that we really should treat everybody the same, that we really need to help the downtrodden, that we really need to be inclusive of all. I mean, we talk about the beloved community, we talk about inclusiveness, and we cannot practice it in our own services, have not been able to do that for decades. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, I just don't. These are well-meaning, good people, and they are just, when it comes around to it, they want to be comfortable in what they're familiar with. And it's really hard to give up that comfort.
There's a better way that we we haven't played with yet.
I hope so. I mean, that's where breakdown comes in, really. When it's all a puddle, then you reconfigure it differently. And that's the place where you can be open and stuff because everybody's building anew. It's like getting married and moving into somebody else's house. Really hard. You get married, you buy your own house together. Much easier. Much easier. I mean, it's human nature. That's really what we're talking about, I think.
Well, as we mature, I mean, it's a given fact that we're not mature yet as a species.
Well, even people that I would think of as mature, old souls, still get set in their ways, still have their habits they don't want to change, still have things that make them feel good they don't want to give up. Yeah, and I don't know how we allow for that in a way that isn't interfering with others. I mean, I'm not quite sure how that blend happens in real life on a day-to-day basis. Just don't know. Anybody else have thoughts?
Each of us is responsible for our own well-being to
Mhm.
start with. I mean, that's the base. That's the go-to.
Mhm.
And everyone has a God-given responsibility for their self
Yep.
first and foremost.
And I like my songs. Thank you so much. And I don't want to give them up. They make me happy.
So good. You can find a way to weave it in to
Well,
share
will
it.
you sing my songs with me and make me feel good?
Maybe. I mean, we can be creative. We're creative, innovative, as every other species is in their environment.
Yeah, it used to be, just going back to the church, that we used to do different religions on different Sundays. So there would be talk about different religions, understanding of practice, and an experience of the practice kind of thing. And we haven't done that for a long time. When we got caught up in racism, all that kind of disappeared. But we're not bringing Black experience in or Latino experience in, which would be a similar kind of thing. Because part of it is just not having an experience to appreciate. You know, if I'd never seen a taco, I wouldn't like tacos. But I've seen tacos and I like tacos. And it's not, a food that comes from my tradition at all. But once I had the experience, it becomes part of my tradition and I can bring it in. But without that experience, there's no way to bridge that because it still stays outside of what is my comfort zone. And that may be actually a step into that kind of stuff, being willing to have things different enough every week, talking church, to open that experience. And that's what travel does, right? You go into a different country and you experience it, and my gosh, they live well, they do wonderful things, and it's all stupid and dumb and silly and doesn't make any sense, and yet it works. How they make their choices is really a mystery, and yet it functions. So you can kind of gain an appreciation for a different way could be effective, could be even nice, you know, because you enjoy being there. And it's opening to that experience a little bit, but you got to have the experience. You got to have that as part of your own life in order to be open.
I can't even remember the last time I stepped foot in a church. They just don't, I don't know, it's the framework. It's the structure of this social structure in it. It's not appealing.
Well, it's also part of getting older. No, seriously. I mean, you know, I was sharing with people yesterday my most peaceful experience that immediately came to mind was spending the night on what's it called, Sheep Meadow in Central Park with a group of friends. There are about 50 of us. And I was doing the 2 o'clock in the morning shift with a couple other guys, and we're listening to the city. Had a transformative experience, just listening to the pulse of the city. And that was something we all shared. So we were different, we were all young, but, you know, had different outtakes on, you know, what life was like. At the time, I was working up in the South Bronx at a venereal disease clinic. You know, it was saturated in other experience. I can't keep that up. Every once in a while, I'll go to take the subway here in town in Atlanta, and I'll have a conversation with someone completely different. And it really captures my heart when we have a sharing, you know, there's a rise in, you know, recognition of one another and the differences, and just satisfying knowledge that we are human beings together on this planet. But I couldn't go back to trying to live their life. I mean, we have various centers, food distribution around town. And for one thing, I don't have the physical stamina to be able to work in these places, but it would be very difficult at this point. So we need to recognize that it's a huge system we're talking about. So many different experiences of life.
Yeah.
And so many different memories of the way that we were.
Yeah.
So at least I love listening to anyone new, but you know, anyone who has some real difference to my life.
Where I go for myself is cosmic. I go cosmic. When human centricness gets so broken and mixed matched and not knowing what to do, it's like, okay, let's take a cosmic point of view, because we're galactic in origin, and that helps me. That helps me take a fresh breath and realize it's not human centric. When are we going to stop being human centric and realize we're part of life? We're part of something that works.
Yeah, I really appreciated you bringing that point up in the conversation we were in a few days ago, Mark. That it really was the shift in measurement, I think, was the discussion. What are we measuring in terms of success? And you brought up that it's life as the measure and vitality. So I think that really does make a difference. Yeah. So thank you. And I'm glad to have you here and sorry you have to go. But it is almost time. So, and Ani, I'm so glad you were able to get here.
Me too. I don't know why it's so hard navigating through, but I'm glad we made it.
Perseverance, perseverance.
Yeah. But it's all set up to work.
Yep.
It's all
You
set
just
up.
got to know what buttons to push.
It's all majestic. And how life is set up. And humbling ourselves enough to look at it all in admiration. And sometimes even worship. Oh my God, I love to worship. Doesn't happen often, but to embrace the majesty of everything.
Yeah. And Mark, I would add it might have something to do with scale because we've gone from pods of like 250 or so people to 8 billion. And there's something about that that requires a different kind of structure.
See you later.
Right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Well, so nice to be with you guys.
It is.
Enjoy this time.
So I have to admit that physically I have a hard time, even at this hour. I have maybe 3 hours of real clear
Yeah.
thinking at this point. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I just really enjoy being together.
Yeah.
No matter what we're saying. Yeah, I only have maybe an hour or so where I can think as clearly as Mark does. Mea culpa.
Yeah. I have definitely experienced that too, especially getting out of the hospital. It's like the hospital was a whole different world. And I left everything else to just be present there. And then coming back into the world, it's like, God, I don't remember how to do this. It was just, and the catastrophe yesterday, I don't know if that was part of it or not. I think it's a little different, but it just does.
Well, I've had a few of those lately, which
Yeah.
brings up mind, those mistakes.
Yeah.
God, how could I have done that? I mean, I've never, no, I haven't. This
But
isn't
there it is. Yeah.
for various reasons, very different reasons, I'm sure, but this
Yep.
is the fact.
Yep.
So it's nice to have younger people that I can actually just sit back and listen to.
Yes.
But anyway, the prognosis is good. I will get over this present predicament of,
Very good. Good, good.
Yay,
but
yay.
Yeah.
it may take a while.
Yeah, I'm having those same kinds of conversations with my nurses. It's been kind of fun to
Yeah, good.
be able to facilitate some things for people and offer ideas and resources that they didn't have and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and I have ways of doing that too. And for a large part of life, people, of the human consciousness, people are making do with all kinds of different situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find that as long as it's not getting lost, Ani, in the cosmic consciousness for me anyway. But it is a matter of having that consciousness and knowing that it you know, it informs,
It
what I
is real too.
are doing at any particular time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are all kinds of people I need to be dealing with with a clear mind, and just to know that that's what's important, not the challenges that we may put up against each other.
Yeah.
To me, it's not about getting lost in it. It's about finding myself in it. It's identification.
There's that too.
Yeah.
with-
Did I mention the ancient apocalypse to you guys?
I don't think
It
so.
is a Netflix series. And it's the ancient apocalypse, the Americas, in Netflix. And it's about 6 episodes, I believe. And it's very, very interesting because he is exploring the possibility of a more sophisticated, actually quite sophisticated civilization existing in the Americas before the Ice Age. And he has gone all over the Americas to look at places where there are sort of holes in our understanding, or where a civilization has come up with something that is pretty sophisticated, and then being able to trace it back into other places. So things like there are footprints in New Mexico that are 23,000 years old. That's before the Ice Age. Somebody lived there. Quite a few somebodies, actually. And it's just really interesting to see the evidence that he's bringing forward about that possibility and what that might look like. So just would throw it out. It's just kind of a fun trip.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Well, what's a hoot to me is we've all evolved from bacteria.
Still evolving, I think.
Yeah.
I
But
gotta
we've involved with bacteria. They have not left us. They are part of us.
Dude. Yeah,
We are
We-
not different from, we have included them.
yeah.
but we have evolved from them and are interacting with them, and some, I mean, it's complicated, but it's interesting.
It is interesting, yes.
Toxical. I love playing like with my mind like that, from cosmic to bacterial, because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have evolved from bacteria, and we are cosmic in origin.
We evolved with bacteria. They have come along in their decisions, made us. We have not left them behind by any means.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Yes.
I'll see you again in a week.
Good.
Yes.
Look to it. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Bye, Annie.
Oh, are we leaving too?
Yep. I gotta go too. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, you're welcome. Bye.